Bienvenue.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome.
Different parts of the country with the weather kind of upset. I hear Southern Ontario is under a few snowflakes, whereas we in the East, we're doing great. We have nice weather. So anyways, glad to see all of you. Mr. Lawrence, glad to see you here to sit on your bill. So I'll call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 26 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food. Pursuant to the order of reference of Wednesday, February 24, 2021, and the motion adopted by the committee on March 9, 2021, the committee is resuming its study of Bill C-206, an act to amend the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, qualifying farming fuel. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. I would like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Pour garantir le bon déroulement de la réunion, j'aimerais...
To ensure the proper functioning of this meeting, there are a few rules. Before you take the floor, wait until I appoint you to do so. And if you are not going to speak, please put your microphone on mute. The microphones in the room will be controlled by the technician. Let me remind you that all of the statements made by the members and witnesses must go through the chair. When you don't have the floor, again, put your microphone on mute.
Start with the witness list, and I'll start perhaps with les producteurs de grains du Québec. So I'll welcome, so I don't know if they're here yet. Today with us, we have the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, Mr. Keith Curry, Vice President, and Frank Anno, Director, Environment and Science Policy. I'm not sure if they're here yet. Grain Growers of Canada, Aaron Goriluk, Executive Director, and we also have Mr. Jonathan Hodson, Director, and Producteur de grains du Québec, Mr. Christian Overbeek, Président. Alors, Mr. Overbeek, pour 5 minutes. Monsieur Overbeek, si vous voulez bien commencer.
Mr. Overbeek, you have 5 minutes. We'd like you to start, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say that the pronunciation of my name is Overbeek. I apologize, Mr. Overbeek. No problem. You're not the first nor the last. I am a producer in Saint-Hyacinthe. It's a family business. I am sole shareholder. We basically produce soya, wheat, and corn. I am trying to ensure the best quality of my soil. We have all sorts of ways to ensure the quality of our soil, and we also try to grow other products. Just very quickly, on Quebec territory, we have 1,000 hectares, and there are 9,500 families who do the farming, and there's more than 5,000 tons that is produced every year. We produce all sorts of grains throughout Quebec. Usually, we make sure that, first of all, we have to make sure that we can till our soils. So we have to make sure that we work the soil. And for the past few years, there's also the function of conditioning the grain and the storing of it. Obviously, it doesn't get consumed all at once. And so it's important for us to ensure that if we are going to remain competitive in the grain sector, that we have access to well-priced energy, and we mustn't be overtaxed through various elements that might come from our various government programs. The quality of the grains for our sector, as grain sellers is extremely important because our local consumers, as well as the ones here in Canada and abroad, always want to make sure that they have a first-class grain. There's a new knowledge that has come about in the past few years that will enable us to have a somewhat higher yield than what is expected by the market. We have to factor that into our business, and then we have to put our product to market that is of high quality, and we have to do that both for the international and Canadian markets. If there is an additional tax that we have to pay, that is obviously going to increase our production costs and reduce our productivity compared to other producers elsewhere in the world. I understand that on the Quebec territory right now, we are subject to a carbon pricing system that might be different from other Canadian provinces. At the end of this exercise, we would want to be able to work in a fair manner with all of the other producers around the world. Just to give you a small indication of what I mean is right now there's a small business has to pay $3 per ton, but if you look at what has gone on, the taxes have gone up significantly, so it's quite important to bear these things in mind when talking about the productivity of our sector. We certainly hope that the tax in question be reimbursed through various Canadian measures. For example, any fuel, be it diesel or other. So those are the few introductory words that I wanted to make. Given the limited time, I would certainly like to answer any of the questions that you might have. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Overbeck. If I understand correctly, the other witnesses are now online. So I will ask the Grain Growers of Canada.
Is here. So I think we'll give Grain Growers of Canada 5 minutes to do their statement. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Chair, honorable members. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Jonathan Hodson, and I am a member of the Board of Directors of the Grain Growers of Canada. On that board, I am a representative of the Manitoba Crop Alliance, a producer group representing wheat, barley, corn, sunflower, flax, and winter cereal growers across Manitoba. I am joined today by the Grain Growers of Canada Executive Director, Aaron Garlick. I farm near Lenore in southwestern Manitoba. Our family farm is 5th generation, and we have a diverse crop rotation of corn, spring wheat, barley, canola, soybeans, peas, forages, as well as a cow-calf operation. I'm here today to express our support for Bill C-206. This legislation would expand the existing exemption from the price on pollution for qualifying farm fuels to include propane and natural gas. The expansion of this exemption is critical to grain farmers like me because we often need to dry our grain prior to marketing it. In yesterday's budget, we were pleased to see the government's intention to return a portion of carbon tax collected back to farmers in backstop jurisdictions beginning in 2021-22, and we look forward to additional details. However, we continue to support for the passage of Bill C-206, as it remains the most straightforward, cost-efficient way of providing a full exemption for grain drying where no alternative fuel source exists. Canada is truly blessed with a large agricultural land base spread across this country, but many areas have to deal with a short growing season, and in combination with a changing climate, we are increasingly feeling the impacts of wet harvests and early snowfall. When we experience a lot of moisture and unpredictable weather, we have no choice but to dry our grain to make it suitable for the markets that rely on us, both at home and abroad. Canadian producers grow and market some of the best quality grain in the world, and in many regions of Canada, one of the tools we use to ensure that quality is a grain dryer. The reality is that putting grain with too high of a moisture level in the bin isn't an option for us. It needs to be dried to the correct level, or I risk losing part of it, if not the entire value of that product. When compounded by the rising carbon tax, this represents a real blow to the profitability of my farm. A couple of years ago, we made a significant investment of over $100,000 to upgrade to a more efficient grain drying system. There were no programs available, so just like many other farmers, we spent the money ourselves to improve our drying efficiency. If there were a grain dryer that ran off something other than fossil fuels, we would look at upgrading again. But that option just does not exist right now. Each year, our farm spends between $15,000 and $25,000 in propane to dry our grain. Of our total expense, this is not the largest, but as a necessity after harvest, money spent on drying my grain is money out of pocket. Each year that the carbon tax goes up, that is more money straight off my bottom line. As a farmer, I am a price taker, not a price maker. And unlike other businesses, I cannot pass on these extra costs to the consumer. However, the increased cost of production for my inputs and equipment and the rising rates for rail and road transportation do get passed on to me. This legislation is not a remedy for the increased costs the carbon tax adds for us. However, it is an important recognition that the spirit behind the carbon tax cannot be achieved in this instance. The desired purpose of the price on pollution is to drive a transition to alternative fuel sources. But in the case of grain drying, there are simply no viable alternatives available. There are other environmental considerations beyond just taxing unavoidable emissions. Certain crops common across all of Canada, such as corn, are generally harvested with high moisture and must be dried. Corn has become a valuable part of my crop rotation, which in and of itself is a critical tool in the environmental sustainability of our operation. Crop rotation provides many benefits, including improved soil health, reduced erosion, and disease prevention. If the costs of drying become too high and eat away at potential profits too much, that will be one less crop available for our rotation and a potential loss of those environmental benefits. We were very encouraged to see support for this legislation from the Bloc Québécois, NDP, the Green Party, and a number of independent MPs. It is important to recognize that where the carbon tax is ineffective in its aim, that changes, like what are proposed in Bill C-206, should be made. I hope that this legislation will receive unanimous support to pass through this committee and be on a path to become law in time for this year's harvest. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we would be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hodson. And now we will go to the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. I understand that Mr. Arnaud is not here yet. Oh, he is here, and the other one, Mr. Keith Curry, is. So, anyways, you have 5 minutes if you want to take the opening statement. 5 minutes, and hopefully the sound will be okay, because I believe they didn't have time to run the check. So I just want to advise the committee that, although we do have that as a motion, they have not had time. So hopefully things will work out great. So Mr. Arnaud, you can start your statement.
Thank you so much. Just checking. Can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. I'll leave my video off just to kind of give myself some more bandwidth here, just to accommodate for my audio. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the chair and committee for inviting us to appear today. My name is Frank Anno. I am a Director of Environment and Science Policy. Our Vice President, Keith Curry, should be joining us shortly. We greatly appreciate this opportunity to provide testimony on Bill C-206, an act to amend the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act. CFA is Canada's largest general farm organization, and we represent approximately 200,000 farmers and farm families nationwide. We are dedicated to promoting best management practices that reduce on-farm emissions to help Canada meet its goals under the Paris Agreement. However, the carbon tax has significantly increased farmers' costs of business. As price takers, farmers cannot pass on these costs to customers or to the national market. To that effect, our members greatly support the bill's goal to extend the exemption for qualifying farming fuel to marketable natural gas and propane. As everyone is aware, C-206 arose largely in response to the 2019 wet harvest, when extreme rainfall put increased burden on grain drying, which is made even more expensive by the carbon tax. The Western Canadian Growers Association has reported that some farmers paid over $10,000 in carbon taxes on their grain drying bill that fall alone. These price hikes led the Green Party and the Conservatives to both comment that carbon tax relief for farmers was justified and necessary, and C-206 soon followed. During the bill's pandemic hiatus, government released a report estimating that the carbon tax only increased grain drying costs by an average of $210 to $774 in 2019. CFA did not endorse this downplaying of impacts, as the low-range estimates were provided by the Alberta government, who were not familiar with pollution pricing during the 2019 harvest and had no real-world data to contribute to the report. As such, this report does not rebuke the need for exemption under C206. The Liberals have since raised very valid concern the bill may not provide the intended relief for grain dryers, as they are not considered eligible farming machinery under the Pollution Pricing Act. To ensure that the bill provides the intended relief for farmers, CFA is recommending that it cover exemptions not only for grain drying, but for machinery used for livestock heating and cooling and irrigation as well. Our rationale is that these tools are critical for mitigating the increasing on-farm impacts of climate change. Canada's Changing Climate Report shows that annual precipitation has increased in all regions since 1948, especially during the fall and winter seasons, the very months that harvest and grain drying take place. With each passing year, this trend results in a higher risk of conditions similar to or even worse than what we saw in 2019. The same report further states that temperature extremes have also increased since 1948, which will raise the severity of heat waves and droughts and bring higher risk of crop damage and livestock heat death. While extreme heat has yet to have its carbon tax watershed moments, it is only a matter of time. And when that time comes, farmers should not be penalized for relying on tools needed to mitigate these impacts. We instead believe that the money paid in carbon surcharges will be better spent on participating in programs that increase fuel efficiency, such as those announced in yesterday's budget. While CFA is currently analyzing the budget, these programs do appear to offer avenues to attain these efficiencies. However, it must be noted that these avenues are often administered as cost shares, with farms required to contribute up to 50% of expenses. As such, it is in the best interest of government to ensure that farmers have the cash needed to invest in and deliver these programs. While the carbon tax driving up grain drying bills to $10,000 does add incentive to reduce emissions, it also reduces the amount of cash farmers have to buy into these cost shares. That is a reason why exemption is still required. As it stands now, carbon surcharges have the very unintended effect of taxing the very mitigation measures needed to respond to droughts, extreme rainfall. As an incentive to drive down emissions, the tax is an added and unnecessary burden. Even with exemptions for natural gas and propane, the price of those fuels is still scheduled to increase under the Clean Fuel Standard in 2023. This, combined with cost savings from fuel efficiency programs, is more than enough incentive to reduce emissions. In closing, CFA shares the government's vision of a future with zero-emission energy sources that are scalable and adopted by the agri-food sector. Until then, the upward trend of climate impacts will place continued strain on even our most innovative fuel efficiency gains. That is why the exemption on natural gas and propane must be applied to grain drying, irrigation, and livestock heating and cooling. Thank you again for this opportunity to engage. We welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ano. And now we'll go to our question round, and we'll start with a 6-minute round to Mr. Philip Lawrence. So go ahead, Ms. Lawrence, for up to 6 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it is a pleasure to be back out in front of the Agriculture Committee, and also thank you for the witnesses, and just a brief comment here, if you will indulge me. I think one of the untold stories of the pandemic is the sacrifices our farmers have made, and they've been working through all the challenges, through the lockdowns, to make sure that we haven't had a disruption in our food supply. They work every day tirelessly, even before the pandemic, and then with the additional obstacles. So a big thank you, I'm sure, on behalf of everyone here and all Canadians, for everything that you and your members have done for Canada in keeping us well fed during these difficult times. Onto our questions. I just want to first of all just have I guess a round table from all the witnesses here as to what the impact is on the carbon tax on their members, and if they could comment to see if the credit provided by the government is substantial, or whether in fact the majority, if not all of their members, are actually in a loss position because of the carbon tax. I'll start with the grain growers, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir. Yep.
Sorry, I hit the mute button. I'll maybe, what do you mean, sorry, I'll ask back. What credit do you mean?
Well, if according to the government, the carbon tax is revenue neutral in that Canadians actually receive back more in their credit than they do in the amount that they're paying. Is that true for your members?
Well, I would disagree with that. There's lots of negative consequences. I know that as producers, we're grateful that the exemption on farm fuels is where it has been. Where is that right now? most of it is covered, but there is lots of negative consequences because obviously all the people that provide us with inputs and everything, they are not covered. So their costs go up, and those costs are passed on to us. So there is consequences for us in the carbon tax, and obviously as it goes forward with the forecast for how much is going to increase, the costs are going to go up every year.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Now to the CFA, are your members fully compensated by the credit provided in the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Act for the carbon tax?
Yeah, that wouldn't be I believe, the opinion of our stakeholders and members. Obviously, the statement that the carbon tax is revenue neutral for the majority of Canadians, I believe that could potentially apply on a citizen-to-citizen basis. But our farmers obviously do rely on a number of inputs and a number of processes that are not exempt from carbon fuel charges. We saw recently, obviously within the last year, that the greenhouse gas exemption was further applied for greenhouses, for example. What we'd be looking for is for a similar actual application to be applied to obviously grain dryers, other machinery, including irrigation, livestock heating, to ensure that there's full exemption. Without that, we have received reports that there are mounting impacts in terms of bottom line price costs to our farmers' bottom line.
And Mr. New, would you say that a grain dryer is a piece of industrial machinery?
That's a very good question. No, that's where the actual the basis of the I believe the issue kind of stands. Our understanding is that the government was interpreting it as being a machinery used to heat and cool a building. When our actual engagement, I believe it was with the Grain Farmers of Canada, they believe that it was actually an industrial process and that it basically shouldn't be subject to exclusion under eligible farming machinery. I think they provided with a lot of very up-to-date information. This is in a conversation we were having ongoing between us and also the Canada Revenue Agency.
So for the grain growers, would you say that a grain dryer is a piece of industrial machinery?
No, it's a farm equipment.
It's farm equipment, and so it would be a lot of the grain drying would be, or at least some of it would be done on a farm, correct?
Correct.
All right. So yes. You're under the same belief that I am, and that the parliamentary drafters that grain drying is included in Bill 206, C206.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you very much. For Mr. Overbeck, if I've got that right, not Beekbeck, is when you have additional costs added to grain drying, or to your grain, or to farming in general, does that make you less competitive in the market?
Yes, indeed, it makes us much less competitive. The grain market, it has international reference levels, and if other producers don't have to pay what we do, then de facto I become less competitive, and that applies to the entire sector.
And then, if I have time, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to
40 seconds.
40 seconds. Okay. To the grain dryers, if in fact you're given the choice between an exemption for propane and natural gas and or a credit, what would your members prefer?
Is the question for me? If so, then I would much prefer to have an exemption than a reimbursement, because it would provide us with more stability.
Perfect. And any of the other witnesses? I have 5 seconds left, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, it's pretty much gone.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Lawrence. And now we'll go to Monsieur Drouin for 6 minutes. Allez-y, Monsieur Drouin.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank my colleagues. I call them my colleagues because they are people that I know very well. I'll start with Mr. Overbeck. I know that you are a farmer in Quebec, so you know that Bill C-206 would not necessarily apply in your jurisdiction. Is that correct? Is that the way you see it? Well, yes, we understand that, but there could be some things that would come into play. The world of politics is always changing. If there is one thing, though, in Quebec, it's that Quebec protects its powers. So I don't see a scenario where it would really get involved in this. Nonetheless, I would like to know whether you had the opportunity to speak with your counterparts in the U.S., because now they have signed the various trade agreements. They've signed NAFTA because you know that they have a climate similar to ours. I have not yet had the opportunity to exchange with my colleagues from the U.S. or from Europe. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Part of your testimony, and one of the issues that you mentioned was to you would be seeking an amendment to propose an exemption for heating and cooling of buildings. Is that correct? If you're speaking, you're on mute.
Sorry, that was directed towards the Canadian Federation of Agriculture?
Yes, yeah.
All right, I apologize. That's correct. Yeah, we would be seeking exemptions specifically for machinery used for heating and cooling a building, looking at helping control temperature for livestock during extreme weather.
Okay, and just to manage expectations, that's a discussion that our committee is going to have, but we're not sure if we can do that because C206 seeks to amend the eligible fuels and not necessarily create that exemption in another part of the law. So that's something we will have to have, but that amendment could be deemed inadmissible. But point taken. But I just I like to be manage expectations and tell you right away that this could be the case, just so you don't. That's not a partisan issue. It's simply a matter of procedure in the House. Just so you know.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, and my question to Mr. Overbeck was about the U.S. is now signed to the Paris Accord, and I'm wondering, has the Canadian Federation of Agriculture started to speak with their U.S. counterpart with regards to what types of exemptions and what types of programs are available for farmers, especially in the states up north where they have a similar climate to Canada, with regards to what that climate policy will look like?
We actually have not started those conversations yet, but they're ones that we're obviously very eager to have. We're obviously looking, for example, to the potential impacts for carbon credit trading between California as well as Canada. Upcoming, we'll be looking to have a United Nations independent dialogue for the Sustainable Food Summit. So we'll be looking to engage our U.S. counterparts at that point.
Yeah, and I hope you do, because I think if we could integrate both, our economies are really well integrated, but if our carbon policies can be integrated, then it's an advantage to our farmers, and it's an advantage to our economy, and it's much more simple to understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know you guys will be providing a brief to us at some point in rather due course. Thanks for your testimony, and I'll move on to Mr. Hudson. I understand the testimony that you gave, and obviously the point of the carbon tax, and I support Mr. Lawrence's bill. It's a commitment I made to my farmers, but just in terms of what we are trying to do is not penalize the farmers, but change the suppliers and essentially get rid of those carbon intensive technologies. And I've heard you say that there is no technology for grain drying. Has the grain growers started to look at potential other technologies or partner with universities to see whether or not how we can reduce that carbon footprint to zero, so you don't have to pay the tax at all?
Maybe pass that on to Aaron Garlick. I can make a comment that as a producer, we're always listening and hearing, and if there's something out there, we would hear about it. If there was something that there was a possibility to replace what we're doing, it would be something we would know about. But now, at this point, there is nothing tangible out there. But as far as the collaborating down the road, that's obviously something that I'm sure organizations will start to do as we see this window closing, of having to do something, and I'm sure that's what organizations will start to work towards.
Yeah, just to add to Mr. Hodson's comments, I think that if there were an alternative energy available as an alternative to natural gas through propane, farmers would be all over this. There's a significant cost, as Mr. Hodson indicated, associated with purchasing the natural gas and propane for the purposes of drying grain. So if we had a solar-powered grain dryer, I think you'd see a lot of farmers adopting that technology in fairly short order, but that is not the case right now.
Yeah, no, today, am I out of time?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, Francis. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Ms.
Merci.
Gorilock. Et maintenant, M. Perron pour 6 minutes. Allez-y, M. Perron.
Mr. Perron, 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to our witnesses for coming here to tell us what they are really experiencing. It's greatly appreciated. I'll start with Mr. Overbeck. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. In Quebec, you're not exempt of this. We're all fully aware of that. In fact, we've already had some discussions on this bill. We're trying to look at this objectively. You dealt with the question of jurisdiction with Mr. Drouin. Why is it that you're still in favor of this bill? Do you think that Quebec is going to adjust to what the rest of Canada is doing? Well, our hope is that the bill works throughout the entire Canadian territory, except for in areas where there's a different system in place, like in Quebec. If it works well across Canada, we hope that here in Quebec, the Quebec farmers will be subjected to the same principles of non-taxation or reimbursements, just like our colleagues from other provinces or territories. So if I follow you, you are a volunteer to temporarily be at a disadvantage compared to other Canadian farmers with the hope of getting something that applies to everyone later on. Well, by making sure that this temporary aspect does not last forever, well, I think that I would hope that there would be an immediate effect in Quebec. That is the part that we don't control whatsoever. So certainly we can chat about this later. But I see that you support Bill C-206 and all its principles. So, Mr. Overbeck, when you say that there aren't any other alternatives, biomechanization plants, the biomass, geothermal plants, etc. Have you done any studies on that? I know that the costs are prohibitive right now. Yes, trials have been done as well as research. A few farm businesses have set up shop, but these are businesses that need heat throughout the year, not just for a short period of time, like in the grain sector. In the grain sector, the time frame is very short, i.e. the fall. So if you're trying to really justify an investment in biomass, you have to take that into account. As far as the economic viability is concerned, well, it's the same thing that applies to when we use electrical energy as a source of heat. So yes, we do have to use these sources of heat, but we use natural gas and propane that are generally used for commercial reasons. Have you ever thought of how governments could help you instead of taxing or by reducing your profit margin or doing other things? Are there other things that the governments could do to make sure you have a good return on investment? Is it possible that the governments could come to your help, or is it too big an investment that's required? I think the investments right now are too big to get a return on them. Obviously, more research has to be done to find alternative ways to reduce our consumption of fossil fuels. Yes, we have to find some solution for the short and medium term for the farmers, especially the grain farmers. What are the negative impacts, Mr. Overbeck, that this could have on your farms if the tax system stays as it is, say, in the medium term? Well, the negative impacts Well, we talked about those a little bit earlier. $2,000 for an average-sized farm in Quebec. Well, that's the current situation. And we know that if we have any changes made to the carbon tax later on, and if it goes down, well, that's great. And it could have an impact of tens and thousands of dollars. It could certainly have an impact on the profitability of our businesses. Yes. Also, it would enable us to transfer our businesses to future generations. It's not foreseeable that those sums would be invested in the transition. There's no equivalency. Let's say the government gave you back the money when you started a transition process, let's say. Well, the government perhaps could hold our hand by giving us some investments to get higher efficiency systems, but you have to take into account that we have operating costs of those new facilities. If it's more expensive than using fossil fuel, even if we got some help from the government to invest in this, you have to take into account the annual operating costs that they might entail. You have 3 seconds left. 3 seconds left, Mr. Perron, that's all. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for helping us guide this committee on this journey with C206. It appears to me from reading Budget 2021 that the government actually paid Mr. Lawrence a big compliment in devoting a good section to the costs of grain drying, and you know that $100 million in refunds in that first year, but also devoting $50 million specifically for more efficient grain dryers. My first question is to the grain growers of Canada. I really want to dig down on what options are available to propane and natural gas. Now, I've been looking on the internet, and there is a company called Triple Green Products that has a bio dryer air, which uses crop residue as a fuel to help dry their grain. So they're exempt from the carbon tax because they're using residue that comes from their own farm. Is this a viable technology? Is this the kind of place that we want to start investing that $50 million and trying to find that efficiency? Because if we leave the carbon tax aside, farmers are still paying a lot of money just for the propane and the natural gas itself. So I just want to find out from you, in what ways is this technology going 5-10 years from now?
Well, it's, I've heard about the biomass as a producer. The concept has been talked about for a long time. And to get it on a farm type scale that's economical, it just hasn't shown to be there at this point. Whether, technology is going to change, and whether 5-10 years down the road, this is something that's going to be economically viable on a farm scale. But I can't predict that or know where that's at this point.
Okay. And you, with C206, I guess with the $100 million that's been announced in Budget 2021, you still are very firmly in commitment of having C206 passed by this Parliament?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. How does the recent Supreme Court decision of Canada, the Supreme Court just recently upheld the constitutionality of the federal carbon tax, and I believe that's probably provided some impetus to provincial governments to start formulating their own carbon pricing schemes. Is that going to make your job harder, or have you already had conversations with provincial governments in using what C206 is trying to achieve federally to try and get that applied to possible future provincial models in some of the prairie provinces?
I will have to admit I have not. I will pass that on to Erin to see if she has any knowledge on that. I run my farm and try to keep, there's enough going on there.
Okay.
Thanks for the
Erin,
question,
please go
Mr.
ahead. Yeah.
McGregor. Thank you. I think, with respect to any carbon tax, and with this discussion in particular, it's really about, is the bill meeting its intended objectives here? And that is ultimately to incentivize practice change. So we want to encourage, for example, with this tax, farmers to use a fuel other than fossil fuels to dry their grain. With no viable alternative at this point, I think your suggestion is a very good one. What investments can we make to ensure that there is an alternative in the future? Because I think that would be something that farmers would widely adopt if in fact it was commercially available and it was an affordable alternative. So let's make those investments in the future. Let's use this bill and an exemption to bridge that gap until such a time when we have those alternatives, to ensure that while there isn't an alternative, farmers are not being punished for doing something that they have no choice but to do.
Great, thank you for that. I guess maybe for my final question, I'll turn to the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, to Mr. Anau. Just getting beyond the debate that exists over the carbon tax, what other ways can we try and improvise and maybe develop smart policy where we're actually rewarding farmers for climate-friendly initiatives? Placing them on the pedestal for the good practices that they're already doing, and maybe devising some system where they actually get financial credit for those practices and rewarded for climate-friendly initiatives, such as their efforts in sequestering carbon in the soil.
Yeah, well, even specific to switching from natural gas and propane, even the context of grain drying, there is potential for example, existing mechanisms in the future. I alluded to the Clean Fuel Standard that will be applying regulations scheduled for natural gas and propane in 2023. There is potential that this will increase the price of these fuels. So under the actual Clean Fuel Standard, as we probably know, there's a credit category that will provide credits to endpoint users such as farmers for switching away from fuels such as natural gas and propane to potentially more emissions friendly fuel sources that are less carbon intensive. So that's one example of a potential mechanism that could serve very well. I think our only real concern is that in the interim, as these processes are getting underway, that farmers may still be in that transition, subject to extreme weather that could drive up the cost of grain drying as that transition is occurring. Even, like I said, even without the actual carbon tax, there could be the Clean Fuel Standard in of itself does provide that incentive for that switch away, along with the actual programming available to provide support. But I'll also refer further questions to Keith Curry, who's our Vice President of the CFA, joining us now.
So that's the time we have for this round.
Thank you so much.
If I may make a comment, just as a greenhouse grower, I bought a boiler from Southern Ontario about 15 years ago that burns round bale to heat whatever you want to heat. I heat my greenhouse. So it does exist. Whether it's sufficient, I'm not sure. But I bought it from Southern Ontario about 15 years ago. It's still in the works. So anyone wants to have a look at it, it's there. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there. Monsieur Lehoux, allez-y pour 5 minutes.
Mr. Lehoux, go ahead for 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to share my time with Mr. Epp. My first question is for Mr. Overbeck. There is currently a cost for grain producers in Quebec, on average $2,000. If this bill is adopted in Canada, and everybody is subject to this new legislation, except for Quebec, if I understand correctly, it is unfair to the Quebec producers because you already have a price to pay that others don't. Is there something that should be done to take some steps forward to support the farmers? We have already had discussions with the representatives of the Quebec government to make sure that our situation is comparable to other Canadian farmers. So far, we have been the only ones to pay a tax, and there is talk of having a reimbursement of this tax if Bill 206 is passed, and you can understand that if it is passed, we're going to continue our discussions with the Quebec authorities to make sure that Quebec farmers are protected. You're saying that there aren't any alternatives right now, but if you think of electricity here in Quebec, which is more attractive Have you had any exchanges with the Minister of Agriculture to see whether if you changed your dryers to electric dryers but had a particular pricing system that applies to grain drying? Have you had those discussions with the Quebec Department of Agriculture? If there is a national bill that is applied throughout Canada, but you in Quebec, you would want to have some equivalency. Yes, some initiatives have already been taken in Quebec to get some equipment to do some grain drying using electricity. But it takes huge investments. The equipment has to be adapted so that it uses enough electricity or the right amount of electricity to reach the right temperature. We had said that we wanted to make sure that our soils remained healthy, and then we would move on to the next step. I give my time now to Mr. Epp, my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you to all the witnesses for your excellent testimony. I'd like to begin by taking this back and trying to place this whole issue into some sort of context from an economic perspective. A number of you indicated that, as grain producers, you are price takers, and that we generally operate in an integrated market. When this issue first came out, the federal estimates were between $210 and $819 per farm. We later learned that was based on the denominator being all census farms as opposed to being commercial farms. And then we heard estimates more in the tens, we heard 10,000 to 14,000 coming from the Federation of Independent Business. So the comment, I'm going to begin directing my comment to the grain growers. Can you talk about the discrepancy between these estimates and then the absence of the passage of this bill? Would you expect the Canadian basis, which kind of is a function of pricing in our integrated market, would it compensate producers for this additional cost as they incur the carbon tax? I'll start with the grain producers, please.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. When you say compensate the producers for the basis change?
Yeah, would the market compensate us? Would the market compensate producers for this additional cost?
No, it would work against us for sure. Obviously, with the negative consequences I mentioned earlier, the other part of the supply chain not being exempt for all the fuels, eventually our basis is going to widen because of the extra costs for all the input suppliers. And those costs are only going to go up as the forecast of the carbon tax increases over the next few years. And obviously at that, every year it seems to me that our competitive equation with our nearest competitor like US is going to work to a negative. It's gonna hurt us.
Thank you. It was also mentioned by one of my colleagues in the questioning that it would be good, from a carbon perspective, that we move forward in an integrated basis.
Mr. Epp, sorry, we're out of time on that one. Perhaps you have a second chance. And now we'll go to Madame Bessette. 5 minutes, Madame Bessette.
Ms. Bessette, you have 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for coming here today. My first question is for Mr. Hudson. Could you tell us of the revenues of the grain industry right now in Canada, and what are your views regarding the future of the sector?
Didn't understand the question. I would have to pass that on to Aaron.
Sure. Yeah, I can speak to that. I think with respect to grain prices, certainly they fluctuate. It really depends on the commodity and the market in which you're selling. Certainly some of our growers have faced some significant market access issues depending on markets around the world, China, India, and Italy, for example. In terms of the future of the sector, like I said, we are securing more free trade agreements around the world, but again, increasingly now we're facing market access challenges in key jurisdictions around the world, unlike ever before.
Merci. Vous venez juste de parler.
Thank you. You just talked about the fluctuation in grain prices. Do farmers have any strategies to take advantage of this?
I would probably like to see if my director, if Mr. Hodson, was able to get the interpretation on that question so he could respond, if I may.
And I apologize. I obviously don't have the setting right. I'm not getting the interpretation, and that's my apologies. My Français is very limited.
It's okay. Do producers have strategies to take advantage of the fluctuation of the grain price? Because she talked about fluctuation, so that would be my question.
Do we have a strategy? Obviously, most producers over time, we try to develop a strategy to the best of our abilities, and it's something that is a learned process, and producers work on it every year.
Thank you. My questions are in French, so if you don't get the translation, do you get translation or no, not at all?
I don't.
Okay. I'll try to translate my questions on my own.
Okay.
Can you explain why some form of energy are the only one that you can use, and is it just because there's a lack of innovation right now?
Peut-être avant, I guess you need to, Mr. Hodson, on the bottom, it says interpretation. I don't know if you have that on your computer, and you just have to select the proper.
So I go to select English then? Just English, and it'll interpret it for me?
Yes.
Okay. I just did that. My apologies.
Okay. Should I try again in French, or you
Sure, if you would like there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Could you explain to us why some forms of energy, you said that there aren't any alternatives to natural gas and propane for grain drying. Could you explain to us why that form of energy or those forms of energy are the only ones that you can use, or is it a lack or a temporary lack of innovation that is causing that?
Yeah, my only option is propane at this point. I don't have a natural gas option. That's very limited to where that option exists on farms. So my only option is propane, which can be delivered to my operation, and it strictly comes down to economics. And if Mr. Chair mentioned about his boiler, there's lots of ideas on a small scale, but to get large enough to be economical on a modern grain farm, the cost is still prohibitive for any technology yet. The options are just cost prohibitive.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Ano. You said you would also like to see the exemption enlarged to apply to heating and irrigation. As Mr. Drouin said, this is a change that may go beyond the scope of Bill C-206, but are there any greener alternatives that exist for the heating of facilities?
Like was actually just addressed by Mr. Hodgson. There's a number of innovations that are currently underway to basically see that there's less emissions in terms of the fuel use, particularly for applications like irrigation. At this point, I know the innovations in terms of them being scalable, being economic to apply on farms, they aren't quite there yet. Obviously, this makes us appreciate injections of innovation funding into these certain fields, but at this point, it's more of a matter of economics that serves the barrier for them being adopted widespread right off the bat.
Merci, Madame Bessette.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bessette and Mr. Ano, and now Mr. Perron for 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes rather. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, Mr. Overbeck, I would like you to finish what you were saying to Mr. Leroux. You said that you had forgotten about biomass and preservation of soil. I was wondering if you had looked at other alternatives. Answer, well, there are a number of producers, and a number of producers decided to look at forestry biomass. We would have to see whether there is additional demand for forestry biomass. There may not be enough, but the major challenge with that when it comes to drying grain is that the equipment is used for a very short period of time in the fall. And that means it is not cost effective compared to a heating system that could work for 8 or 12 months a year for other types of production. All right, so we're always getting back to that question of duration of use that can reduce the cost effectiveness. Mr. Hodson, in your presentation earlier, you referred to alternative products to maximize the use of the soil, and that could put this whole process of drying in danger. So could you maybe elaborate on that?
The way I was looking at it's like a negative consequence, because one of the things that we're cognizant of in the agriculture in Canada is crop rotation, and then the benefits crop rotation has for our soil health and disease prevention and all and other benefits. And we're just on a personal level and on our farm, I'm concerned that down the road, if this cost escalates the way it's forecast to, if things are left in place the way they are, that I may lose that option to have one more crop in my rotation, and I find that troubling.
10 seconds.
You have 10 seconds left. Let's say Bill C-206 doesn't pass. What is going to stop you from doing crop rotation? Can you give us a quick answer, please? Go ahead.
I'll never stop trying to do crop rotation. It's just a matter of having to fill one to fill the void, and I've done that for the crops I have now, and farmers will never stop innovating. But I guess that I would hope that we're allowed to do that and not forced into having to make changes, and that's what part of this is about.
Thank you, Mr. Hodson. Merci, Monsieur Ferrand. Mr. McGregor for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I'll go back to just a comparison side by side between Bill C-206 and what was announced in the budget yesterday. So the Department of Finance is estimating $100 million in the first year, and then they go on to say that returns in future years will be based on proceeds from the price of pollution. And they say it's the intention to return a portion of the proceeds. Now, I know policy like this doesn't just occur in a vacuum. In the lead up to the budget, did the government ever have any consultations with you, specifically the Department of Finance? And I guess this is to all the witnesses. We'll start with the grain growers. Did they ever have any consultation with you on developing this policy? Did they give you any idea as to what the portion would be of the proceeds?
I will pass this question on to Aaron Garlick here.
No, we don't have any indication at this point right now with what in terms of what to expect, Mr. McGregor, for the portion of the rebate. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, naturally, we have some concerns with some additional administrative costs that may be associated with a rebate. And that's why even despite last night's announcement around budget 2021, we still remain in favor of a full exemption because details on that rebate are still, I understand, forthcoming. But no, we have not been in talks with government on that.
I mean, it seems to me, just if we're looking for streamlined policy, that's the easiest to understand. Just really making this definition change to what a qualifying farm fuel is in the first place, and stopping the tax from being collected at the first step, rather than going through a complicated process that's reliant on what the Department of Finance feels is appropriate. Yeah, it just seems to me to be the better of both worlds. Not a lot of time in this 2.5 minutes, so Mr. Chair, I'll just end it there and thank our first round witnesses for appearing today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. McGregor, and that will end our first round. I really want to thank the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, Mr. Keith Curry, although you kind of came in late, nobody probably noticed you, but that's good. Thanks for being here. And Mr. Frank Arnault, Director of Environment Science Policy from the Grain Growers of Canada, Aaron Gorilak, Executive Director, thanks for being here, and Jonathan Hodson, of course, Director, thank you. Des producteurs de grains du Québec, Monsieur Christian Overbeck, Président, merci de votre.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oberbeck, for coming and for your comments.
2 minutes so we can change the panel, and we'll be right back as soon as we can. Thank you, and we'll suspend at this stage. panel. From the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, Mr. Bob Lowe, President, and also Fawn Jackson, la directrice politique et relations internationales. Aussi,
Fawn Jackson, Director of Policy and International Relations. From Équiterre, Marc-André Viault, Director, Government Relations, as well as Émile Boisseau-Bouvier, Analyst, Climate Policy and Ecological Transition. It's Marc-André Viault. Yes, Marc-André Viault? Yes? You forgot to mention the first name. For the Farmers for Climate Change, Karen Ross, Director. Or Farmers for Climate Solutions, rather.
6 minutes. 5 minutes. Sorry, 5 minutes for your opening statement. So whoever wants to do the Cattlemen Association, 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee on Bill C-206. My name is Bob Lowe, and I'm the president of the Canadian Cattlemen's Association and a rancher from Alberta. With me is Fawn Jackson, Director of Policy and International Relations with the Canadian Cattlemen's Association. The beef industry contributes $17 billion to Canadian GDP while generating over 225,000 jobs. It is the largest Canadian conserver of the Great Northern Plains, of which I would note is a very large store of carbon. In regard to climate pricing policies, we recommend Canada's farmers and ranchers be exempt from direct carbon taxes, but we want to make sure our policy position, shared by leading economists, isn't confused with our very real commitment to being a partner in tackling climate change. Canada's beef industry has recently set very significant and ambitious environmental goals, such as reducing the sector's greenhouse gas footprint by 33% in 2030. As agriculture is a trade-dependent and complex industry, it can be very difficult to correct for competitiveness and trade impacts due to carbon pricing. It is extremely unlikely that farmers and ranchers will be able to pass along the carbon tax, as we are price takers and as there are no real alternatives for farmers. Increasing the price of propane and natural gas will not decrease the use of these energy sources. For these reasons, we have seen agriculture commonly exempted, as recommended by policy experts, from the direct costs of carbon pricing schemes. It's just not the right tool for the job. We do recognize that the initial act exempted most direct taxes on farmers and ranchers, and we appreciate those exemptions. But as identified by this private member's bill, it is important to cover all direct taxes, and we have examples why. Example 1 is a farm that uses natural gas to heat a calving shed and a small shed for holding a couple of tractors and their workbench. On another farm, they have a steam flaker that uses propane to flake corn to improve the digestibility of the feed. The first farm will have a $6,500 annual carbon tax, while the second will have a $63,000 annual carbon tax once the carbon tax reaches the expected $170 per ton. These are taxes on family farms that currently operate on very small margins in an international marketplace. I point to the study completed that found the average long-term margins for a 200-head cow-calf operation provides an annual income of about $20,000, and that 74 to 85% of the cow-calf sector relies on off-farm income. Furthermore, a study completed by Dr. Schoffel at Western University looked at the impact on the beef sector when farm fuel is exempt and when it is not exempt. The study found that even when exempt from the fuel tax at $40 per ton, the carbon tax has a negative $25 per animal impact at the feedlot level and a negative $11 per animal impact at the cow-calf level. The probability of unintentionally pushing food production to other jurisdictions is very real, and with Canada having one of the lowest greenhouse gas footprints per kilo of production at 50% of the global average and being the key conserver of the grassland ecosystem, this pushing of production to other jurisdictions would have serious economic and environmental implications. CCA strongly supports Bill 206. However, we need to ensure the Act covers all areas where a direct carbon tax could impact farmers and ranchers, including heating of buildings, irrigation, and machinery such as grain dryers and steam flakers. We recognize that the budget acknowledged a rebate, but to avoid additional red tape, the exemption should be straightforward and not an added layer to the already complex accounting required to operate Canadian farms and ranches. The Government of Canada is also working on carbon pricing. We are keen to see these move forward as it provides opportunity for agriculture to further contribute to fighting climate change. One of the biggest challenges we have in the beef sector regarding climate change is the loss of grasslands and subsequently the carbon stored in them. We must make sure that either through the offset protocols or other policy tools, the very real possibility of further grassland loss is taken into consideration, and the conservation of these grasslands within the agricultural ecosystem is appropriately recognized. Thank you, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lowe. Et maintenant, de Équiterre.
Now from Équiterre, Mr. Marc-André Viaud, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I'll turn up my sound. Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the Agriculture Committee, my name is Marc-André Viaud. I'm Director of Government Relations at Équiterre, and I'm going to share my time with my colleague, Mr. Émile Boisseau-Bouvier. He's analyst for climate policy. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak today. Just a few words about our organization. We're an environmental NGO that founded the Family Farmers Network in Quebec. We currently have a showcase technology project on soil health and conservation. And we work with the farmers, institutional purchasers, decision makers to find solutions to build an agriculture sector that is more sustainable and resilient. Just a few words on our climate experience. We just recently defended federal jurisdiction on the carbon pricing system before the Supreme Court, along with our colleagues from the Quebec Centre for Environmental Law. And we are very pleased to see that all parties represented in this chamber support the principle of carbon pricing. A lot of things have changed since yesterday. And since the tabling of this bill, first of all, the government announced that the budget announced that the producers in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario are going to get some refunds as of 2021. Now, they have the federal social net, and it is estimated at $100 million for the first year, and is going to increase with the increase of carbon pricing. But it means that there will be an initial sum of $50 million given to producers in Canada to fund the high-efficiency grain dryers. So that announcement was very welcome by the Canadian Federation of Agriculture and the National Farmers Union. You will agree that the federal government's budget responds to the current problem that was raised by this bill without weakening the principle of carbon pricing. It's an avenue that we encourage the parliamentarians to follow rather than the one that is being presented today. We think it's important to support farmers, but you shouldn't encourage the erosion of the carbon pricing mechanisms. Yes, there can be a transition, and it should start fast. We understand that farmers are living through a very stressful period with the pandemic, and there are other climate factors as well. We suggest that another solution be used to help them respond to their income losses related to the use of fossil fuels by maintaining the incentive towards an energy transition. I think that Bill C-206 is inconsistent with what the government has just proposed in its budget. Now I give the floor to my colleague. Thank you very much, Marc-André. Based on the information we got from the federal government, the average cost of operation related to the pollution pricing associated with grain drying per province varies between $210 and $778. According to data, it's the equivalent of 0.05% and 0.38% of the net operating costs of an average size firm. So it is important to find ways to dry grain that are more energy efficient. If you look at the costs per province affected by this bill, in Alberta, it is estimated that it would cost 16 cents per acre or $210 for an average farm. In Saskatchewan, it would be 51 cents per acre of wheat for the pricing of carbon pollution associated with the drying of grain. In Manitoba, it would be $311 to $467 per farm, or between 23 and 33 cents per acre. In Ontario, grain producers estimate that it would be a little over $750 for an average size farm of approximately 400 acres, or 0.44% of operating costs. In conclusion, while this bill is trying to create favorable conditions to maintain the dependence of farms on energy fuels. Given the budget announcement yesterday, it would be in the interest of the agriculture sector and all of its workers that your committees quickly study alternatives for grain drying. Thank you very much. We will be ready to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
I saw her came in replacement of Mr. Blois. Glad to have you here, Ms. McCrimmon. Maintenant, fermier pour la transition climatique, Madame Karen Ross.
Now, Ms. Karen Ross. Karen Ross, rather.
Of the committee, thanks so much for inviting me to present today. My name is Karen Ross. I'm the Director of Farmers for Climate Solutions, or FCS. We're a national coalition of farm organizations that know that agriculture must be part of the solution to climate change. Launched in 2020, our coalition has grown quickly and includes 20 farmer-led and farmer-supporting organizations that represent now over 20,000 farmers and ranchers from coast to coast. Many of them already use farming practices that reduce emissions, increase resilience to extreme weather, and improve their livelihoods. With the right government support, we can rapidly scale these kinds of practices and dramatically reduce emissions from agriculture. FCS recognizes that putting a price on carbon pollution is essential to achieving Canada's emissions reduction commitments. And this is a fact that is now recognized by all parties in the federal parliament. But we also understand the economic concerns behind Bill C-206. Many farmers sell in internationally determined markets, and any additional cost can make already tight margins even tighter. Ultimately, FCS believes that the best way for farmers and ranchers to avoid the price on pollution is to produce less pollution. By transitioning away from fossil fuels, farmers will pay less tax and will be better positioned to compete in the new low-carbon economy. But adopting practices and technologies that are lower fossil fuel comes with a lot of risk and high upfront costs, so farmers can't and shouldn't make this transition alone. In recent history, our international competitors have dramatically scaled up investments in agri-environmental programs, while Canadian farmers have been far less supported. Furthermore, many Canadian industries are receiving ample government support to reskill and adapt for the clean economy, but agriculture has been largely left out, which means that we're not leveraging the full potential of farmers to contribute to our climate solution. As a result, our sector's emissions have and will continue to rise unless we act now. And this is why the funding announced yesterday in Budget 2021 to directly support farmers to immediately adopt lower GHG practices is so heartening. The government has just made an important and unprecedented investment to support farmers to adopt practices like cover cropping, rotational grazing, improved nitrogen management, wetland and tree conservation, and adoption of low GHG machinery, which are all known to reduce emissions and build resilience. This investment directly responds to FCS's pre-budget recommendation and is precisely the type of support needed to help our sector address the urgency of climate change while making smart business decisions. The budget also includes a carbon tax rebate for farmers and support for energy efficiency retrofits of propane and natural gas dryers. Taken together, these investments reflect the fact that the government recognizes the potential for farmers to reduce emissions and is ready to support us to leverage our sector's full potential. There is more that still can be done and needs to be done, but that funding is an essential down payment for a resilient and low GHG farm future. These investments also reflect the fact that on-farm technology to transition to clean economy already exists. When it comes to grain drying, propane and natural gas dryers are already being retrofitted in Canada to increase efficiency. Also, alternative technologies that don't use any fossil fuels are on the Canadian market already. These alternatives all reduce energy bills for farmers and allow them to avoid some or all of the carbon tax, and their high upfront costs are now shared with the government. The transition to low GHG agriculture is inevitable because domestic and international buyers are increasingly demanding low GHG products, and farmers won't be able to meet that market demand unless we start reducing our emissions now. That's why strong government support for innovation will benefit farmers more than exemptions to the carbon price. So in conclusion, the investments made in Budget 2021 recognize that farmers need support to confront the single largest threat facing our sector, that of climate change. Those are critical investments that will jumpstart emission reductions this season, and they also lay a foundation for making agri-environmental support a core component of the next agricultural policy framework in 2023, which must further support farmers to compete in the clean economy of the 21st century. The investments also provide a better path forward for reducing emissions from and maintaining the affordability of grain drying than does Bill C-206. Canadian farmers want to lead on climate change, and FCS is ready to support the design and implementation of these important new programs so that they're widely adopted, they work for farmers, and start to reduce our sector's emissions immediately. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ross. And we'll now go to our question panel. And so for 6 minutes, we'll start with Mr. Lawrence. Go ahead, Mr. Lawrence, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. My first question will be for the Canadian Cattlemen's Association. You described in your testimony that the carbon tax will have a negative impact per head. Could you expand upon what that impact will be?
Yeah, I'm going to take the questions. And so, or the ones that I can't answer, I'll pass on to Bob. But the impact that came out of the Western University found that at that $40 per ton, that there'd be a $25 per head impact at the feedlot and $11 at the cow-calf level, which results in a $63 million impact for our industry. And so that's even when there's exemptions for agriculture.
So, and when you have this carbon pricing that goes into place, there's the direct payment and then there's all the inputs. Do all of your competitors also have to pay carbon tax?
No, our competitors aren't currently. I know some are looking at it. And I think that there's probably more research to do there, but it's certainly very concerning. We export 50% of what we produce. And so, our point is, don't back farmers into a corner where they don't have any other option of what to do with this tool. It's important to look at other tools.
And in your experience dealing with your members, do most of them feel strongly about the environment? And if given the option economically viable, would they choose the more environmentally sensitive, free of government taxation?
Yes, absolutely. It's always heartwarming to see the absolute dedication of Canadian farmers and ranchers, and particularly for those beef producers that have grasslands and have come to appreciate it over the generations and really protect it. Absolutely.
To the changing witnesses, to the gentleman from Equiterre, have you spoken to any Western grain farmers?
I'll take the question. We do speak with different from farmers from all across the country. On parle à des fermiers de partout au pays.
Yes, we do speak with farmers across the country for a lot of our projects. Yes.
Because you know what, I've spoken to many grain farmers across this country, and I would like to know what you would say to them. Some of them who are in danger of losing their farms because of the cost of the carbon tax. and there are no viable alternatives right now. I've spoken to them; they don't exist, and they all want to fight climate change, but they don't want to lose their farms. What would you say to them?
Juste rappeler aux députés que moi, je ne suis pas là pour.
Well, I'm going to remind members that I'm not there to talk politics, except to talk about this particular bill. As I said before, we work with the farmers to try to find solutions to the climate crisis, to the GHGs, and as we already said in our opening statement, we said that this problem that was identified in Bill C-206 is real. We think that the solution that is proposed by this bill is not the right solution. There are compensations, yes, but there is a price on carbon for a reason, and that is because we have to reduce carbon pollution. That's what we understood in the rulings. That
we get about equal time to answer and ask questions. So but there is no other alternative. The idea behind the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Act is where there are elastic markets to encourage people to go to greener solutions. And in many places that may work. But here there are no viable solutions. So by not giving farmers this exemption, you're literally pushing some farmers into bankruptcy. What would you say to those farmers, sir?
Comme j'ai dit, on est.
As I said, we're very sensitive to that reality. And that's why we are saying that the solution door that is opened by the budget that should be adopted before this bill is adopted is a solution which we find more viable because it maintains a price on carbon whereby we will be able to reduce our emissions. But yes, a transition is required while at the same time compensating the farmers.
That's just a consultation that will occur and may result into something next year. And we don't even know in whether that will ever occur and not. There may be a different government, and candidly, hopefully there will be. Why will you not give farmers this break, this small break? Farmers teetering on the edge, give them the break.
Je ne sais pas pourquoi vous me dites que nous ne voulons.
I don't know why you're saying that we don't want to give a break to farmers. We're just saying that the best solution is the one that was presented by the government. That is the carbon tax, the carbon price system that was validated by the Supreme Court should remain, but the farmers should be compensated. They receive some compensation that will enable them to guarantee their income.
You've got about 5 seconds, so
I'll cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Merci, Monsieur Viau. Now we'll go to Mr. Lewis for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lewis, you're on mute, I think. Yeah.
You're on mute. First time in a year and a half or whatever it is, then I did it. I finally was the one that was on mute. My apologies. I just got excited talking to our witnesses. Thank you to everyone for being here. I very much appreciate it. So excited. I did not unmute my microphone. I'd like to begin maybe addressing and asking Ms. Ross some questions. We all know that farmers are on the front line of the worsening climate impacts. With our unpredictable weather and it's posing threats to our sector. And so many farmers that I'm speaking to, and we are all around the country, are practicing a lot of beneficial management practices to reduce the GHGs. They're sequestering carbon and they're increasing their resilience. And with some more government support, we'll be able to practice more climate-friendly farming practices. So we've even heard in the past panels from previous witnesses talk about wet harvests and the ongoing risks, higher risk of these conditions. So we're all looking for more productive and competitive and a resilient farm sector. So we're looking for alternatives to lowering emissions and supporting that innovation. So all the parties in Canada have agreed that we need to price pollution. And now exemptions already exist on farm fuels, as discussed with this bill, would be exempting for heating, But another way to make the agriculture sector more competitive would be to lower emissions and costs in other ways. And you touched on a few, and I wondered if you can expand on them. And part of your organization's 6 high-impact program proposals, with doing more with less nitrogen, increasing adoption of cover cropping, and normalizing rotational grazing and protecting wetlands. So if you could expand on some of those ways, in ways that we can also become more competitive and lower emissions in that sector.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mr. Lewis. I'd be happy to. We have to remember that farm fuels, of course, demand part of the GHG portfolio in agriculture, but it's only 14%. So, the rest of our sector's emissions come from other sources, predominantly nitrogen management, crop production, livestock. And I like the question because I think it's important that within this whole context, we think about the major emission sources and how we can work with farmers directly to support changes in practices to reduce emissions. So, what the budget adopted yesterday was direct support for farmers for 5 priorities that we advanced. Cover cropping is a practice adopted by many Canadian farmers, but not yet scaled. With direct support upfront for farmers, we can scale this practice. It's better for soil health, water management, pest control, but also helps to reduce emissions. Rotational grazing, a practice that is quite well understood. Again, high upfront costs associated with infrastructure, more fencing, more water bowls necessary. So supporting farmers, to share in those upfront costs to then adopt practices that further reduce emissions on our farms is a great way to go. Improved nitrogen management, nitrous oxide from the use of nitrogen fertilizer and nitrogen fertilizer waste is the single largest growing source of emissions in our sector. Let's not lose sight of that one. We need agronomists to work closely with farmers to improve nitrogen management to be more efficient in our use so that we're not wasting nitrogen. That's better for farmers. It's also better for the environment. Finally, around wetlands and trees, so important, keeping trees and wetlands on farms is powerful in terms of maintaining a GHG sink, and farmers can play a huge role in that if they're supported kind of with the economic cost of not farming that land, not making revenue off of that land. And taken together, Mr. Lewis, just to conclude, our analysis, we worked really closely with some of Canada's best GHG modelers, ag economists, and for the first time ever, produced a report in Canada that quantifies the GHG reduction potential of these practices if scaled with the right kinds of supports that we saw in the budget. We're looking at 10 megatons. That's huge. That's just under 1/7 of our total emissions across a season or two. So, it's a powerful way to support farmers to, really be climate heroes, really part of our collective climate solution in Canada.
And they want to be, and I think you touched on it. They basically need that support, that financial support, even education-wise. In our writing here, the Grand River Conservation Area has a really good relationship with the farmers, and then they were doing their part. But it's that support and the programs that are in our budget, like the Nature Smart Climate Solutions Fund or the Agriculture Clean Tech Fund, are all hopefully can make this sector more resilient and also more protected. So, with my remaining time, I wanted to switch to and talk about, in my writing, we've got organizations, a company called BioN, which is an anaerobic digestive system, which turns organic waste into renewable energy and anaerobic digestion. They've already commissioned, this company's already commissioned 345,000 annual tons of waste processing capacity and 9 million watts of electrical generating capacity to date. So can you talk about some of the innovation, such as anaerobic digestion, biogas, that we can invest in to help make this transition?
Oui, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le député.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. Indeed, there are some solutions to fossil fuels, but have not been widely used yet. The example that you gave is very good. There's also triple green products that was referred to earlier. So there are alternatives to electricity. But as we said earlier, the drying of grain occurs seasonally. So there are problems having an electrical system just for on a seasonal basis. Thank you very much. Sorry, the time is up, unfortunately. So let's move on to the next. Now we'll move to Mr. Perron for 6 minutes. Go ahead. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like the witness to continue. Yes, indeed, there are alternatives, be it to use biomass or electricity. There are energy efficient measures possible to make the current systems better and to reduce the use of fossil fuels. What would you respond to the farmers who say, and in fact, the witnesses before you said this, and I forgot to thank all of the witnesses for accepting my invitation. So what do you answer to the producers who say that the alternatives are not economically viable? It's very difficult to make them cost effective. Well, good afternoon, member. Thank you for your question. Indeed, there are a number of alternatives that are not economically viable right now. For example, in Quebec, to electrify some farms, the network is just extended, the grid rather is extended. So if you make the farmers pay for that, it would not be viable. So that is why we really encourage the governments to support the agricultural sector. My colleague, Karen Ross, from Farmers for Climate Solutions, had suggested $300 million investments earlier on. There wasn't that much investment, although there was significant investment. And the Federation of Agriculture was very happy about that, as were other federations and associations. Like you, we're very reluctant to take away that carbon pricing system. But if you look at it fairly, if you look at the current legislation, well, it exempts fuel that is used for tractors, for example. If Bill C-206 can include propane and natural gas that are less polluting gases than those are already exempted, well, producers say they don't have any other economically viable option. Nobody is talking about eliminating carbon taxes, but I was wondering whether that could be a temporary solution, that is, to have an exemption for those fuels, while at the same time giving major support to farmers so that they transition to different systems. Perhaps they could develop infrastructures that would use biomass, for example, that would be good for use on a seasonal basis. I'm just suggesting that. Well, that's a very relevant comment. And the study of this bill is also very pertinent because the problem is real. If there aren't any alternatives, what are people to do? You mentioned the duration, and there's no mention of that in the bill. So there's an exemption for those fuels without any time frame. So, yes, we like the solution that was proposed by the government yesterday, because there's a combination of two things. First of all, there's support, direct support, and there is support through the transition. That transition aid should be used to reduce the direct aid over time because the support that's given for innovation is going to be used during the innovation phase, but not afterwards. So if we include a time frame in this, obviously there would be a major incentive that the government has to support to lead to this transition. Yes, I can understand that you would be more favorable then, even though you would have your reservations. Well, as I said earlier, any mechanism that would reduce the carbon pricing system, well, it would have major impacts on the farming sector. So any mechanism that would affect that mechanism would be a problem in our eyes. That said, the question of timeline is one that would be worth looking at. Mr. View? Sorry, I don't have much time left. But to get back to this timeline, if we look at the policies, well, it's not to go to extreme measures one way or the other. But if we do kind of move, say, serenely towards a reduction of GHGs, I mean, we do have to act quickly. Don't you think that there would be more take-up on the part of the farmers if it were good for their bottom line? Mr. Perron, unfortunately, your time is out. Your time is up. Sorry. Mr. McGregor.
Thank you so much, Chair. I think I'll start with Farmers for Climate Solutions. First of all, just a comment. I really appreciate your opening statement, and I'm really glad to see farmers, particularly members of your organization, really stepping forward and putting themselves in a place of prominence in leading this conversation. Because I too believe that our agricultural producers have a very key role to play over the next decade and beyond in showing, what they can do to be one of our leading weapons in fighting climate change. But I really want to drill down on this question. I know it's very similar to what you've already had from my previous colleagues, just on the alternatives to grain drying, because, our previous round of witnesses, particularly the grain growers of Canada, were quite adamant that there are no viable alternatives to grain drying. And in your opening statement, you did say you support a price on pollution. I do as well. But you also mentioned that you understood the financial crunch that many farmers have. So I guess I'm trying to sort through the two different narratives here. I mean, I mentioned to our previous witnesses that there seems to be some grain drying systems that use crop residue as a fuel source. Are those some of the alternatives that we should be looking at, particularly with respect to this $50 million that has been earmarked in the budget to try and find more efficiency in this? Any way you can help illuminate this issue for us would be greatly appreciated.
Thanks. I don't know about eliminating issues entirely, but I'd love to contribute. And thanks for the question, Mr. McGregor. Listen, this question about alternatives existing in Canada is troubling. I'll just provide one example. We have actually already had a Canadian precedent, a public program that funded, it was called the Grain Dryer Efficiency Program in Alberta, that funded 39 retrofits to grain dryers in Alberta. The program was poorly funded or short-term, not that well publicized, but retrofits are possible, are definitely happening, and are an alternative that help to reduce the, at least reduce the carbon tax that farmers would be paying on grain drying. You mentioned biofuels. There's a Made in Manitoba solution, scalable to any size of farm. It relies on biomass produced on farm to dry grain. These are the kinds of innovations that I think we all wish our sector had decades ago, so that we could have adopted them even before the price on pollution came in place. But we didn't. But it is with these kinds of programs that we're going to see the innovation that we need in our sector. And so in terms of helping to solve this issue, Mr. McGregor, I think one of the key things to keep in mind is absolutely retrofits to existing grain dryers help to reduce emissions, also help to avoid the carbon tax. When it comes to biomass and systems that use biofuel produced on farm, that's I think we proceed with caution. Of course, that eliminates the carbon tax. We need to be sure that actually the life cycle assessment confirms that that actually reduces overall emissions too. That's obviously the ultimate goal. But overall, you know, farmers that are in our network that have retrofitted, that are using alternatives, have significantly lower fuel bills now too. So in the long run, this actually makes really strong economic sense. And ultimately, you know, the way I see it is there's no choice in front of us, right? Our sector is transitioning no matter what because the market is demanding it, domestic and internationally. You know, from biggest to smallest buyers, we're seeing essentially everybody asking for lower GHG foods. So the role for government policy, I strongly believe, is either to better support farmers, to stimulate that innovation, to help support those steep upfront costs, so ultimately we can lower our fuel costs, practices that make more economic sense, you know, rather than, maybe I won't present a rather than, Mr. McGregor, but I'll just conclude by saying, you know, ultimately the urgency of climate change requires all hands on deck, all policies possible. And I think what we're seeing yesterday is a substantial investment that helps to kind of minimize the financial burden of the price of pollution on farmers using natural gas and propane, while also directly supporting the transition to reduce emissions. And that's a win-win. That's what we need to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. You know, when you look at the budgetary announcement yesterday, they are announcing that $100 million in the first year. And C206 has a very narrow scope. I mean, when you look at it, it really is essentially about grain drying. I guess, you know, the government is recognizing that some money has to be returned to farmers during this transition phase. So, you know, when you're holding up the budgetary announcements of yesterday and C206, I mean, couldn't you argue plausibly that C206 is in fact an interim measure while we help farmers in the transition?
I think that's what the rebate serves to do. The rebate serves to recognize the upfront cost of the tax right now, tight margins that farmers are facing, but also stimulate, you know, doesn't shy away from acknowledging that farmers want to and can reduce emissions. And we need to start now. We have 9 growing seasons left to Paris and our emissions are rising across the board.
Okay, thanks so much for that.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Thank you, Mr. Ross. And now Mr. Steinley for the second round, 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Steinley.
Thank you very much. Bob and Fawn, would your membership prefer a rebate or an exemption?
An exemption.
Why would they prefer an exemption?
You know, I think that the conversation, everybody is agreeing that we need to do something, right? And I think that it's about what is the right tool to do that. And I think the problem with taxing them and then giving these exact same dollars back, you know, is a problem in terms of, well, let's not back them into a corner without an extra tool. And so, you know, frankly, I think maybe that time frame discussion is a good one to have while that transition is happening. But this just pays accountants and, you know, middle folks. We need to keep dollars in producers' pockets.
I could not agree with you more. So of your membership, how much money do you think they'll save in their pockets? Have you guys done a study with this exemption in this bill put forward by Mr. Lawrence?
Right. So we've looked at a few specific farms and, you know, looking at those corn flakers that increase the digestibility, which means that it increases or reduces the environmental footprint of those products. So we've looked at, but those it's not like grain drying where every single operation has them. So to try and multiply it out, it's, you know, specific impact. So that's a $63,000 bill to a specific farm. And then looking at another farm that had, you know, sort of standard, has a calving shed and has a shed that holds a couple of tractors. Well, that's a $6,300 impact.
Huge difference. I went home last week and helped my cousins vaccinate heifers, and we put them out to pasture. And since the mid 80s to late 90s, we've been doing rotational grazing in Southwest Saskatchewan because it's the smart thing to do, and we're good environmental stewards of our land. We've been doing crop rotation in Southwest Saskatchewan, across Saskatchewan, Western Canada, since the mid 90s as well, because it does well for our soil conservation and it helps us retain contain nitrogen in the soil when we put different crops on at different times. These aren't new practices, and we're doing them now, and I'm very proud of the innovation that our farmers have done, and I think they know more about the land than we do, and I hear that all the time when I go back home and visit my cousins. For Ms. Ross, I appreciate your testimony very much, and you spoke about having lower GHG emissions in food production, and I don't know the answer to this. I'm hoping you might. What countries have lower GHG food production than Canada? Because I think our producers and our people are doing a very good job, and I would just be willing to know if you have numbers that show there's countries that are doing it more environmentally friendly than we are.
Thanks for your question. I think I'll answer just by saying that our emissions in our sector are rising to 2030, and that's the problem, right? So if we, and there's the second problem, if we look around the world, comparing to some of our most significant competitors like countries in Europe, like the US, we're noticing also that their public investments in farmers in agri-environmental programs, as in programs that help us adopt practices to reduce our environmental footprint, including GHGs, are much, much more significant, right? So two problems at hand here, as in for agriculture to contribute to Canada's climate solution, which I think we all want it to, right? I think every farmer does.
Yep.
We need to reduce our emissions.
So, but is there a country that produces at the level that we do, beef, pork, commodities, has a better environmental record than we do? If you know of, like per ton, Canada, be it beef, pork, I think our emissions are comparable or lower than most other countries right now. And I agree, I think everyone on this call agrees we can continue to do better. But at this point in time, is there a country that does agriculture better environmentally than us, in your opinion?
Yeah, thanks. I think we're comparing apples to oranges. So if we think about GHG efficiency per pound of what we produce, or per pound, let's just use that metric, we're doing very well. Again, what we need to remember is that climate change is going to continue and increase impacts on our farms if we don't reduce absolute emissions. And that is the problem we need to consider, right?
Yeah, no, I think we agree on that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to know that you think we're doing it very, very well. We completely agree. There's always more work to be done. To the gentlemen that were Iter, I believe, what's the largest farm that you guys got information from in Saskatchewan, Alberta, or Manitoba based on your numbers that you shared about having rebates be comparable to the price they're paying on grain drying or irrigation pumps?
Oui, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. That information was provided by the respective provincial governments and transmitted to the federal government, so they are public.
I will go to Mr. Drouin for 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Drouin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the questions that my colleagues, Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Steinley, are asking on whether or not Canadians or farmers prefer a rebate versus an exemption, and I can assure them that if we ask Canadians whether they prefer paying taxes or not, they'd say they don't. That's just it's a matter of fact. But unfortunately, we do have to pay some taxes in this country, and probably any country that around the world. But that's not the fact here. I just want to start off by saying, we're not trying to penalize farmers. What we're trying to do is change the suppliers, and the suppliers are the issue, not the farmers. And I know, Fawn, I know, and I'm calling you Fawn because I think we've last time I saw you was actually on a farm where you guys were showing me about rotational grazing and how that was working really well in Vankleek in my riding. And the study that you looked at the $25 per head, did that take into account, like obviously that's if variables don't change. So if we continue to use the same supply of natural gas or propane and whatnot.
Yeah, so that was looking at whether the beef industry has a fuel exemption or doesn't have a fuel exemption. And so that actually doesn't even include the propane and natural gas. That was the original fuel exemption. And what we found was that whether we're exempt or not, the carbon price has a very significant impact on the competitiveness of the industry.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the last time I saw you, the U.S. elections hadn't happened, and now it's a question I've asked previous witnesses. I'm just wondering if your organization has spoken with the U.S. now that they've announced that they'll be a signatory again to the Paris Accord. And I'm asking that because I know, especially on the cattleman side, there's trades that happens. There's cattle that goes down south and it comes back down. So we're somewhat really integrated. And are you aware of any climate policy that they're proposing, especially that would hit their sectors, their sectors that's similar to ours?
Yeah, we've absolutely been in discussions with partners at American Farm Bureau and Cattlemen's Association down there and a number of other organizations, and talking about how we tackle climate change together. And we certainly recognize the importance of policy alignment, particularly within the North American sphere. And so sharing our experiences in Canada and with our American partners, but also with our partners around the globe. And it's really important because over the last couple of years, when we look at how Alberta is doing, for example, in comparison to Texas, we've seen that we've become less competitive. And I'm not going to attribute that all to climate pricing, and it's not that we're against it. It's just about how do we compete in this global environment and make sure that we don't just push production to other jurisdictions, which is, I know, nobody's intention, but that's why we have these conversations about how to do this the right way.
Right. And is the U.S. saying how they're going to reduce their emissions within the cattle industry? And I would be looking at some of the northern states, which would have more maybe comparable weather than we do here.
I think that one of the tools that everybody's discussing is ecosystem service payment programs. And, Karen talked a little bit, about that. And I think that offers a lot of exciting opportunity because you can reward then for carbon sequestration, but you can also reward for biodiversity and, a whole bunch of stacking impacts. So I've heard a lot of discussion on that in the US. And I think that that's a really appropriate tool for agriculture.
Great. And are you keeping statistics in terms of how many of your farmers are doing like rotational grazing? I know Mr. Steinley said that's a practice that's widely adapted in southern Saskatchewan. Is that something that I haven't visited every farm here. Maybe one day I will, but I know that it's a practice that's somewhat very adopted here, but I don't have statistics.
Yeah, you're right. It is a well-adopted tool, but I think that there's more and more research going into how can we further increase carbon sequestration with tools such as grazing animals. And, admittedly, I think that there's quite a bit more research to be done there, but I think what the research has shown us is that there is quite a bit more potential there. So, Bob talked about we have a greenhouse gas footprint, which is 50% of the world average, but that doesn't even take into consideration the carbon sequestration that happens in the beef industry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Monsieur Drouin. Maintenant, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drouin. Now it's Mr. Perron. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The last question I had for Mr. Viau earlier on. Well, we're pretty much on the same wavelength here. Can we understand that the farmers don't want to be dependent on a government? They prefer an exemption at source and some money for the transition to allow for innovation. This isn't necessarily my position, but if we tax the producer, we take away the financial capacity and his investment capacity. Perhaps it could be a temporary exemption. Maybe we could do this under C206, and we give some financial leeway. And there's an incentive under the innovation program. As you said in yesterday's budget, there was $50 million for the dryers, but that's not very much for the whole country. And that is often a problem with policies. They talk about these sums and they disappear very quickly, so perhaps more resources are needed. I'd like to hear your view on this option. Well, look, I think that improving the innovation programs and those for transitions towards more effective energy sources. My colleague from Farmers for Climate Solutions could go on this. But if you just look at this, well, I'm very pleased to answer your question. Perhaps you can just complete the answer later. But let's get back to this issue of being less dependent. Yes, it is a good idea to be less dependent, but producers are always going to be dependent when there are extreme weather events, when there is climate change, and we would like to be able to rely on government help. Unless we review the farm support programs rather than wait for disasters. Yes, indeed. Well, I'd like to give a few seconds to Ms. Ross to complete that answer. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Perron.
Million is likely not enough. It is a wonderful start. So in conversations with Agriculture Canada, I understand that on average, retrofitting a grain dryer would cost about $25,000. With that amount, we could do 4,000 in 1 year. Not bad.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Unfortunately, I have to move to the next one. And we're a little bit over time. I'm hoping the committee will indulge me. So we would just want to complete the round. So Mr. McGregor, you have 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Ross, I've got two questions. The first question is, can you just provide a little bit more detail on those retrofits that you mentioned? You know, if you know what they involved and maybe some of the efficiencies that were achieved. I mean, if you don't know, that's okay. The other part of my question, though, is you had made reference in your opening statement about the other parts of the budget that were mentioned. You know, helping accelerate emissions reductions through nitrogen management, the adoption of cover cropping, rotational grazing, etc. In your view, you know, looking at the critical next 10 years, what other policy areas can we be engaging in, particularly with regards to carbon sequestration? Like, in your view, is there some kind of a reward system where we can analyze the status of Canada's soils, look at the techniques that farmers are employing, and maybe give them a credit for the good job that they are doing in putting carbon in the soil where we want it to be and not in the atmosphere where it's causing all this havoc?
Great questions. Okay, so for the first one,
probably around 2 minutes left.
I don't know the technical answer, but I can conclude just by saying that the Alberta program that I flagged earlier, the average grant size was $6,000 for retrofits. So there's and that led to about 40 retrofits in Alberta. So I mean that's different than the 25,000 I said. So I don't know if that means that the technology was different, but it's something we should all look into, I suppose. Me included. For the second question, there is so much more to do. You're flagging soil carbon, so I'll go with that one. Absolutely, that's an incredible resource that farmers are responsible to protect on millions of acres across Canada. It's better for our production if we have better soil health. It's better for the climate. It's better for water, biodiversity, for so many great reasons. You know, other folks here, Fawn amongst others, have talked about the potential of offsets. This is an important opportunity on the horizon. I understand that 2 protocols are at least being prioritized. What we want to remember about offset protocols, though, and payments is that we want to be sure that it's changing the status quo. So ultimately, to lead to real emission reductions, we need to be sure that offset payments are actually generating new emission reductions. So, you know, the investment we saw in the budget yesterday is so important, if for no other reason, to create an important public bridge to incent behavior change on our farms, to help share that upfront cost, so that by the time, if offset markets come into place, we'll be well supported to really scale up a transition to improved soil health. And you mentioned mapping. I think that's so important. We need to better understand the potential of our soil to sequester practices, to sequester carbon, and which practices have the highest impact. You know, in our work for the budget submission, even though we worked with some of Canada's best GHG scientists in Canadian agriculture who have participated in the Kyoto Protocol, you know, have been at this for decades, we still struggled to find enough data to be very, very confident in the megaton reductions on farms. So more research needed, paired with more incentives direct to farmers to adopt these practices.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McGregor. Thank you, Ms. Ross. So that concludes our second panel, very interesting conversations. I want to thank the Canadian Cattlemen Association, Mr. Bob Lowe, and also Ms. Jackson, and also the Équiterre, M. Marc-André Viau, Directeur de Relations, et
Mr. Marc-André Viau, Director, as well as Mr. Émile Boisseau-Bouvier, Analyst. Thank you to both of you.
Of course, and thank you so much for your testimony. So that
Merci, Monsieur le
concludes our
Président.
meeting.
Merci à tous les membres.
Merci. We will see you again Thursday to our committee members. Thank you so much.